Welcome to a new episode of the Advancing Consciousness series with Franco Di Nicola. This is a place where people can come to gain further insight and clarity as to what is going on and how we can shift things on a personal and global level, while also accessing higher levels of consciousness and awareness. We bring this series to you free of charge so that many are able to access this information. However, if you resonate with what Franco shares and you would like to support his work, contributions are welcomed and greatly appreciated. A link is in the description and will be provided in the chat if you feel guided to do so. Also, we have many previous workshops, such as a couple of our most recent, Maneuvering with Neutrality and Alignment during this next wave of unfoldments, and Deprogram Clearing Empowerment Workshop. You could also join us in our membership program, Let's Talk About You, where like-minded people come together bi-weekly to talk about the topics requiring deeper understanding and clarity. All of these are available on Teachable, and we encourage you to check them out as they are great resources at very affordable prices to assist in better understanding this human experience. The Teachable link will also be provided in the chat and description. And lastly, don't forget to share. As the more of us coming together and creating a shift in oneself, the more effective it'll be to shift things globally. Thank you for joining us and being part of the change. Enjoy today's broadcast.
Welcome everybody to another Advancing Consciousness series episode. Today is episode 48. This is kind of an interesting episode because this episode was not really actually planned and it wasn't even queued to be done. Because the information that was coming in and my soul really wanted to share this update with you guys because of all the things that are going to unfold, this is why we have episode 48 being what it is. Now, because of episode 48 being so important in a way that it needed a support episode. So today we're actually having two episodes. So we're going to have episode 49 following this one at 4 p.m. or basically about 2 hours from now. So this episode gives you the update and what are we looking at for 2021 and so forth. And then we're going to look at how we could better manage and navigate through all of that. So that'll be in episode 49. So today it's two episodes back to back. So great. Thank you for coming together. Thank you for all your support and for being part of this beautiful expansion and that you're all experiencing and we are experiencing together. We've come here together again at this point in time because it was really important for us to really take a look at what's going on. Because look, I mean, we've been looking at the month of October. So first of all, just wanted to give you the update. So in episode 48, updating the projected next 4 to 5 months with the theme for 2021. So no one can deny October has been interesting. October has been somewhat polarized. In fact, it brought to new levels of what we can look at as insanity on the playground around us. Now, of course, at the same time, we, depending on your journey and what you have still active with yourself and what you are ready for changes, you may have felt the different pulses that came in energetically that could have stimulated powerful memories, powerful dream states that helped to clear out some of that stuff, but you may have had some really intense physical stuff, which I had the privilege to have that experience also. But at the same time, you had all these things going on, but also the dance of everything that was playing out around us has elevated. Now, I know in certain parts of the world, there's a lot of unrest and so forth, and other parts, especially the US and so forth, which are interconnected to other parts of the world. Going through this political stuff that's going on in elections and whatever else. So there's been really powerful polarization exposed to that, and also at the same time kind of putting a spotlight on a lot of the things that are going on, and really to kind of assist people to get a clear view of what's going on and to actually make a choice based on their own observation. Now, of course, that is a smaller portion in comparison to how many people are driven and guided and some people call it brainwashed or whatever it is, but that's kind of a choice you make to get whatever the mainstream, whatever is being put out there by the collective, by other parties and peoples and so forth, have really shaped ourselves in, what direction we want to go in that avenue, and also for other observers in other parts of the world. And plus, of course, all of this other unfoldment regarding this so-called virus and so forth, that, there's another wave, and then there's a possibly third wave, which, is all being streamed as potentiality, the opportunity to kind of put us back in the box and lock us up and so forth, shut down certain things of that nature. These are all dances that have occurred just in the month of October, and today is the 31st, the very last day. But, all of this that's been playing out has been really, really unsettling to a lot of people. And also at the same time, some of us have been feeling, great, things are getting destabilized. Yes, things are looking more insane. And that we can lock into seeing more what looks like insane. Now, again, I'm not saying this is in a judgment or anything of that nature, but I'm saying it as a term or a word that we would understand ourselves. So the fact is, rationality, or even how all of that looks in that, the way it's playing out, is also, how can I say it, thrown out the window in a sense, because we're not even looking at, does this even actually make sense? Now, there's several levels. Of course, does it make sense on our mind? Now, our mind is really have lots of different inputs and also a lot of programs too. So there may be a lot of stuff that we got conditioned programmed to kind of see the world a certain way, but then, we have also input from your soul, you have your input from your human entity, and also your physical innate consciousness that is really strongly connected to the planet itself and whatever else has to offer for you. Now, just to bring clarity, we've had a lot of different impulses of energies and so forth, and that have stimulated things so the polarity would even be more illuminated, but at the same time, people acting out. Now, you've probably seen people acting out in very odd ways. In some cases, you have also something that's irrational, doesn't even make any sense, or so forth. Those are all part and parcel of the changes that are occurring right now for you. Now, this is all assisting us and has been assisting. So October has been a ramp up for us. And now we're going into the following months, and we do have some interesting times ahead. Now, what I'm talking about is not to be, focused on the fact that it's going to be something horrible or anything of that nature. It's going to be colorful for sure, absolutely. And this is what we've agreed upon collectively, to play this game in extremes. So the extremeness that we're experiencing has several folds that play out for us and several purposes for us. Now, we have collectively agreed to take some huge leaps in our journey. Now, this huge leap is within ourselves, within all the different levels of clusters or arrangements and engagements and so forth that you have with families and different organizations and different connections that you connected with or play with every day, but also everything that is changing on the planet, because a lot of that paints and shapes how all of this is playing out. So to have a deeper understanding of what's really taking place at this point in time, we have agreed to speed things up even further. And not only speed it up, to intensify it even further. Now, this is not by any means to create more fear, but it will, to some degree, if that is a default that's still somewhat active for you. And the fear could be, what's happening, is things falling apart, are we going to make it, or whatever. There's going to come up a lot of things because the ego is really super active for many of us, and the ego is still connecting with a lot of other egos, and it's also very attentive to watch what's going on and have its own interpretation, and a lot of the interpretation is from collective programming anyways. So it's not coming from a pure state. And this is why we're going to have episode 49 in a short while, to be able to kind of look at it in a different viewpoint, so we have a better grounding of how to navigate through that. So here we are. We've come to the end of October. Now we're stepping into November. So we're basically going into the month of November. We've got December coming up. Then we have January, and we got February, and then March. So I'm putting all of these months up. The reason I'm doing that, because each one are kind of interconnected, and each one has its own tone to it. So we're going into November. November, we are stepping into an even more elevated state of frequency. This will create, to the degree that we choose to observe it that way, we can create more destabilizing states with potentials that may look like, on the big screen of what we call the world, it going even crazier in a sense. So this is not to say that we need to be afraid of it or whatever. The reason I'm sharing this is so that you actually go into observer state and you actually know how things are unfolding. Now, of course, it's not all pinpoint, step by step, these are the things that are going to go. But what's happening, there's powerful waves of energy coming in for each of these months, okay? And each one has a certain tone to it. Now we have something very specific on the 21st, which I will cover shortly. But as we're going into November, you are going to see that there's going to be much more intensified unrest on several levels. More reactions from people with the option to kind of say, no, we're not going to. So there different things, perceptions and ideas are going to be presented. And we've already started seeing it. But at the same time, we're seeing the other side where it's coming from is uncredible. Is that correct? Incredible? No, it's not credible. It's not credible. And that, in fact, that they are kind of playing a role, and kind of an unconscious role, even though there is a bigger scheme behind that. Because many of us have put in, pretty well, everybody's put in authority and rules as making it real. So some of this will be presenting. So some of the rules and some of the confines and so forth, and plus the fact that no matter which choice we go in the electoral aspect of US right now, it's going to create some form of unrest based on the fact that both parties are going to, or the people that follow it, are going to react one way or another. Now, that's only going to be for a while, because the thing is, it will allow us to see how wrapped up we are in the choices and how much we've given power to it. So for us to be in a position where we can not only observe it, and if it brings up anything for us, we definitely want to look at it and create a shift within ourselves so that we can let it go. We have to look at what's going on as part of the game of the next level of intensity that we have stepped. So the next 2 months, basically November and December, are going to elevate even further. But there is another part to this. During those months, we have even stronger waves of energy coming in, stronger pulses of fuller spectrum or broader spectrum of light codes, it is also stimulating us much more powerfully, not only physically but emotionally, but it's also assisting us to create changes. So there's an upgrading that's happening in the physical component and the innate of the physicality, while the planet's receiving that and experiencing that, and all the animal kingdoms and sentient beings basically are receiving these powerful pulses at the same time. So we're having that. Our human entity is actually going to kind of shed a few things and have a further encodements that will actually refine its role in you and how it plays a role on the external component or the projection of this holographic part of it. And then the soul itself is actually now tuning itself even more further because it can extend its range. But at the same time, your mind is also going through this rewiring process. But at the same time, the big picture of whatever's playing out around us is going to become much more polarized, intensified as the screen. However, it does not mean that we fall in one or the other. We can see it for what it is. Now, the extremes are going to create certain things, which I'm going to talk about in the next episode, but it's also going to create us to go into resistance and judgments and so forth, which we're going to look at later. But at the same time, it's going to give us the opportunity to see the clarity of all of this stuff changing. Now, this will affect a lot of the different systems and structures, which will, kind of crack between the seams a little further. But at the same time, as we're going through that, we may feel more darkness and more intensities brewing, but we are not going to engage in it. Now, some will choose that. So that brewing is really just part of the purging, but at the same time, it's the elevating component of it to kind of trigger any of those negatives or lower vibrational states of yourself to come to the surface. So what's occurring with that, it's really still part of what we have chosen to do, and is to move forward. Now, part of this is also to collapse more of the inverted matrix programming that we have within ourselves and the collective clusters, because we still have collective clusters that hold that inverted matrix, inverted 3D and 2D state, which we tend to go play with, because it doesn't matter if you're an organic 5D, you have the freedom, and it's very easy to do so by shifting any part of it by anything that gets triggered to go into either organic 3D or inverted 3D or 2D. Maybe a lot of you that are on the call here at this point or listening and watching this is not going to go into the 2D part, but you can deeply get into the inverted 3D, but also, engage and react and respond to a lot of what this inverted matrix represented and what we have locked in as a state. Now, of course, the clusters are all broken up, so you're going to find some clusters that will react a little further, either going more destabilized or achieving more clarity. This is about also achieving more clarity. So you're going to find, say, in your family dynamic could swing where the family dynamic could take different sides. One, is choosing to kind of open themselves up and question or understand or see that the things don't actually make sense, and others are going to even shut down even further and possibly even go into fear. Now, as the observer going in, you're going to allow them to have their dance. You're going to allow them to have their whatever their experience is. But at the same time, you're still going to be yourself and holding that energy within yourself, because you are very much more connected to those higher vibrations and higher states of being and that clarity and that consciousness. So you're going to find that in these 2 months that you're going to have some pretty elevated intensities. Now, of course, the pulses that are coming in are almost like every other day, pretty well. So you're going to get one after the other to facilitate us. And this is why I wanted to say we were moving forward in a very powerful way, because we've agreed to. So is it going to look somewhat chaotic? Yes. If you're just looking at it and saying and have a perceptional judgment and so forth, it can look way more chaotic. Can also be something that a lot of people can dive into the fear component of it. Some people will also find it that in one way or another that whatever they're observing can play a very intense role for them. So these are the options that are there. Now, because what we're looking at, there's about 550 million people that are stationed in fifth dimensional consciousness that do have the opportunity and do so, depending on whatever's still active with them, to go in organic 3D or inverted 3D. You still have like a 2.7, 2.8 billion people that are in the organic 3D, and then the rest of them are really in the what we call the extras role. Now, those extras, unless other souls drop in or there's an exchange mechanism happening within their operating system, they will play whatever the collective narrative is for that point in time. So it's going to look like people are siding to this control structures and so forth, but to observe that they are actually playing a role. You are sovereign, you're powerful, you have your own free will. No one can ever take that away from you. No one can take your sovereignty. It can create the illusion of it. So that may be challenged to some degree if you're observing, but you just remind yourself that I am still the sovereign being that I am, and not only sovereign, but I am source itself. I am the creator of my own creation and the observer of all creation. And as source, you are not going to get caught up in the depth of what you normally would have. But at the same time, as you're observing all of this, as you're looking at whatever's playing out, you are actually accessing, and this is the capacity you have, is accessing a higher state of being at this point in time. Now, also, the other thing is that there'll be high potentialities. Now, of course, you have to understand what we're looking at, even in the political part of it, there is a preference as a collective which direction to go. And no matter which way it goes, there's going to be elevated unsettledness, elevated reactions, and so forth. But that's only to kind of purge some of the things that are still active and how many people are still bound to the illusion that one versus the other. Now, if you're going to look at all of this, how it's playing out, and the thing is, there is a preference that we made with a very small option that it can go a different direction. And if it is that small option is exercised, then it can create even more intensities and unstableness, but it also sets us the stage to make a stronger, even determined choice to say, we are not complying, we are not agreeing, and we're not going to follow through with this, regardless. But the same will happen the other way, it's just that it is staged slightly different. Two different roles. One is to take you into the depth of it. The other one is kind of keep it to the certain degree and expose a lot of things, which actually feeds into what 2021 is about. But at the same time, eventually that will have to dissolve too, and that is one of the things that will take place a few years down the road, regardless. So it's not, the end going one way or the other. There is definitely a preference. There is definitely one side that actually is more compliant, or let's call it that, more aligned with a lot of the arrangements that we have made ahead of time. So, and again, the only reason we made these arrangements is we felt that in one way or another, it wasn't absolutely necessary to have that super constructed or constrained state of being. So again, November and December, things are going to elevate. Things may look even crazier. You may find people reacting in a certain way where they're actually kind of losing their mind, sort of thing. It's not a bad thing, but it's just showing that their operating system is breaking down, and it allows the space for them eventually along the way to be able to connect to their true essence, because many people have given away their own essence. They may have come in with it, they've played the game of life to a certain degree, but along the way there was a surrendering. And this is something that we've all done to some degree or another, and some really a lot, where you've given yourself away to no longer have free thought, no longer even knowing that you even have any say in any matter, or the fact that you respond to a conditioning or programming of sorts and nothing more. And that being the case, with all of this stuff that's going on, it's going to push things to a really powerful level where they're going to feel that they're going crazy. And you may observe that in your reaction. That can be as immediate as in your family, could be in your work environment, can be in your communities, and it can be on the big worldscape, depending on how it's playing out. Now, this is not doom and gloom. This is actually exciting because in a way, it's actually doing what we have wanting to do. Now, of course, the ego is going to turn around and say that this is not a good thing because it's all falling apart, and that we need to be afraid, we need to go into survival and so forth. Now, there's going to be some opportunities where it looks like that we may have chains of supplies and stuff like that, somewhat curbed and something of that nature. It depends on which direction it goes, that it can be more or less. However, that is all temporarily, and all of that will just really empower people to say, okay, we're going to move forward. And including these lockdowns and so forth, because a lot more people right now are questioning things, and more people are not even open to the idea. So it doesn't matter which party is even promoting one side or the other. Like one wants to open, and then there's all this other fear that everybody else likes to project, and the other one's saying, well, we've got to close down because of these other fears that we are projecting. But regardless, more and more people are saying, no, we're not doing this anymore. We're not supporting this. And this, as much as it's being offered already, just a couple of the last few pulses that came in has changed some of the systems already, where now they're backpedaling, where they're basically saying, oh, we don't support it, when before all of that was supported. And they are in the health organization and so forth. So they're starting to come forward now and say, no, we're not going to support it, because they've had already massive impact, and other role players really stepping up and saying, hey, we're not doing this. So collectively, you have the choice to say, or start with you to say, no, we're not going to support any of this stuff, and we're not going to continue to comply with whatever it is. Now, of course, there's going to be rollouts later on in the year. This year, it could be early next year, where there's an injection you can have that will solve whatever it is. Now, that is an option that you will have. Will it give you a better opportunity to not have whatever they're projecting as the idea of what it is? It's not. Or is it going to cause more problems? It just puts more codes in your body that it has an option to activate or deactivate at this point in time, and it's not absolutely necessary. However, that's a choice you make, and after you made it, your body will adjust accordingly, and you are the one that can activate or deactivate any part of it. Now, if you're going in fear, and I got to have that, well, then you are going to open a can of worms, for sure, but that's only for you to give you an experience that will actually shake you up and give you the option to say, hey, do I still want to play with this? Because a lot of people are still very powerfully driven with fear. Fear is that part of that inverted matrix, inverted 3D. Because in our organic 3D and organic 5D, fear is not, it's something that is just there. It's not even to be used, but at the same time, it's just there in such a fashion that we can relate with it, see it, and see how we've moved forward from it, but it is not a driver. It's not kind of something that we utilize. So if you're finding yourself going into those states of fear, then guess what? You're going to find that in one way or another that you're stimulating that old program, and you still have it active within yourself. And that's the only thing. So it's been kind of shared that when we're going in here, it's going to look like it's going to be denser, darker, more intensified. However, like I was saying, a lot of the intense polarities will come up to the surface and so forth, with a lot of opportunity for us to engage in it or not. And when I say engage or not, you have the option, am I going to play with this or not? And all of us have individual choices. Now, you can share with others the choices, but it's not for you to dictate. Coming into the 21st of December, we have a powerful, well, we call it the solstice, but we have a powerful energetic part that's coming in. It's going to basically put a limit. So, up to this point in time, there has been no limits. And when I mean limits, limits to how intense in negative polarity, we can go, and unconsciousness. The stuff that's coming in here will allow it to go even deeper. And the only reason it's going deeper is because it's still there. Okay? Now, that's again part of self-empowerment, because you have the choice to go down it. And you can go, but you can turn it off at any time. So you're looking at this point, that even this 2 months and going into the following months after that, up to March, are going to accentuate things very powerfully. However, there's a change. On the 21st, there is not only an unfoldment coming in, but there is a powerful energy that will come in. And this can kind of create some disruption either before or after, anyways, around that time, where some of the electronics may just act up a little weird. I'm not saying it's going to blow anything, but it can act a little weird. But around this time, so look at it this way. This is kind of the higher frequency that we're on, or choosing to be on. So every time that we have pulses coming in, and this has been going on for a long time, it actually lowers our frequency tremendously. So it just keeps setting lower and lower at times. Now, because these things already exist and have existed for a while, so we can actually have the deep dive, and we've been experiencing a lot of deep dive. So what happens is, as you're having these deep dives and you get more realization, your frequency gets higher and you just keep going up. Now, what happens on the 21st? Well, there's no limit how deep you can go. It doesn't, and you will have playmates that are, more than willing to play at these lower levels. And there are also part of all the organizations that exist, from its fundamental component, is very low frequency. And it's very low state of consciousness. And there are lots of playmates that want to play there. And lots of playmates that say, hey, keep coming, keep coming. So all of the stuff that we're going through is helping us purge so that we can do whatever adjustments we need to do ourselves. But it hasn't been limited to how far it goes. So on the 21st, what's going to happen is that it's actually eliminating, at this point, all of the stuff down here. And what do I mean by that? That your frequency can drop, but it can no longer drop as far as it did before. So that means that the polarization, especially the heaviness on the negative side, will actually be retracted forward. So a lot of these older frequencies and these playmates will be disassembled, or taken out of equation. When I mean out of equation, they can't go there anymore to play that at that point. And anything that is still around that really doesn't want to play there may leave, and they'll just disappear in a sense, because you're not going to see them around anymore or anything of that nature. However, that's another story. We're not going to get into that. So basically, the capacities to go lower, or as low as before, there's a limit. So this will be the limit. That means we can drop for sure, but we can't drop as low. This also changes how deep we can get caught up in the intensities of whatever's playing out, and the intensities of all the drama and things that we have experienced, drama and trauma. So that in fact, that even within ourselves, we're not going to go so deep into that depression and stuff that you may have had before as a capacity. You can still drop it to a certain degree, but it won't go as far. So this is not only changing it on the planet, so it's purging the lower frequencies that were all put into place when all of this inverted stuff was introduced 10,000 years ago and continued to escalate, and also the playmates that were there. That part is getting clear, but it's also because of the fact that we're all infiltrated with it, that it's also taking away our capacity. And that was a choice that we made. Now, some will still play with it to some degree, but they can't go as far. So the potential of even what we call destruction will not be able to go that deep, that far any longer. And that happens on the 21st. So around at this point, it eliminates all of the super low frequencies, and all the playmates will no longer be able to play at that level. Some will leave, but the majority will not be able to play at that level. So this is what's happening in the 21st, and that will shift things in a powerful way so that, in fact, we're not going to be experiencing the polarities much. Go
Just
ahead.
for clarity, so going down lower into that, it'll be limited to. So that's for anybody who has an awareness and is open. It's not for, if you're at a certain frequency already, correct?
Well, if you're a certain frequency, you just cannot push it that far. You can't go to what you can call, let me throw a name, to a deeper demonic state, just as a name, okay? So, in fact, a lot of this stuff that was created in the Luciferian operating system will not be accessible anymore. Okay, so in fact, that is not there. So what you're doing is you're taking this whole scale of frequency out of the operating system of the planet and humanity and everything else too. So as much as it can still drop, but it can't go any further. That's where the limit comes in. On the 21st, the limit comes in. That's not quite an arrow, is it? So on the 21st, this limit is set. But as it's doing that, it's purging all of this. It's purging all of those levels that we've been able to play with before. Those levels also gave us the opportunity to kill each other in mass. I'm not talking individual, in mass. What we call self-destruction. So that capacity to even go to that point, and even the functionality of the mind, to even go that low, to even have it as a consideration, becomes more difficult. And if you do go that far, it fades away, and you're not going to be supported to be able to do it anyways. So that's kind of what's kicking in. Go ahead.
This is just for clarity. So would that include people who are suicidal?
Well, suicidal is different.
Is it?
Because suicidal is a choice of experience that they have that can be running on emotions and so forth. However, if they were suicidal and they wanted to blow up a whole building with a whole bunch of other people, they can't go that far.
Right, okay.
Stuff like that. Now, unless there's a collective override that happens, but it still will be limited. So there's still some capacities here, but at the same time, it's not going to go as low as before. Now, you have to understand, a lot of the so-called elites and whatever else that you want to call it at this point in time, tend to play with this. And the other thing is, this November, December, and even going further into here, there's still going to be a lot of focus on fear. Be afraid, be afraid, be afraid, type of thing. But that is only just kind of giving us the opportunity to saturate from it, but also to step away from it, because it really doesn't have that much power. It won't, especially when we're going here, even this lower fear. Now, you have to understand, fear has different levels. You have a fear of some potential outcome. That's just a program, first of all. However, if you go deep enough with fear, you now surrender to whatever the narrative is or so forth. So it's like, I'm so scared, I will do anything. And that's down here. When you're getting into that level, you still have fear here to play with. But here is the fear. Now, of course, some people will still play with it to a certain degree. They'll create an illusionary projection of it. But allowing you the fear where you say, okay, sure, I'll take 10 of those therapies, and yeah, it's okay. I'll go live in one of those boxes over there. I'll go live in those, what do they call those places that? Yeah, the camps. Oh, go into the camp. Just save my life, whatever it is. That level of fear, you will not be able to get so immersed in it. Now, some of the extras may choose to play with that, but it's still superficial, so it's not going to that depth. So that's some of the things that is adjusting. And a lot of this going into here, there is still, with the option of March. March is not 100%, but right now it's still looking into that before we're getting into April, and there's another shift that occurs there. There's a lot laying out for that when we're going into April, which, go ahead.
I was going to just to clarify, it's for me as well as maybe for people online,
Mm-hmm.
and that what you're saying, that low fear. So it's just overall frequency that it just will not go. It's going to be gone. That low
Yes.
frequency of fear and destruction, of human destruction. It's being wiped out essentially.
The
And
capacity to go that low and then create from that level.
right.
Because we create at these levels of states, and this is why we create certain things, because we go to such a because
But
in
it's
this
the
level
demonic.
too, you're actually blind.
Yeah.
At that level, you're not even seeing what's going on,
Right.
and that you're actually involved, and you're going to be gone with it, or
Mm-hmm.
whatever that may be. So that part is going to be tuned down or eliminated, so that we can't go that low anymore. It's like there was up to this until the 21st. There's still no limits, and it can go that low. But the thing is, that's where the limit's coming in. So it's like a purging of all lower frequencies from the planetary collective, from the actual collectives that even are stored or have been stored within the solar system and so forth, but also in each of us at this point in time. So you're going to find, as much as you're going to have a negative potentiality of experiencing or fear or anything of that nature, it will not go to the fear of complete, you tell me what to do, and so forth. So some people will still play that to some degree, but it's very superficial. There's not a true, like, I give myself to whatever, cut off whatever, because I want to live or survive. And there's going to be also around it a further realization that will come into place, because there's going to be some huge stuff that's going to happen there to really stimulate more of our truer program when we're going. And this is all 2021, of course.
Also, Franco, someone's asking, does it mean the inverted 3D elite will be gone after the 21st? If that frequency is gone, will the elite be gone?
The ones that are actually the true niche initiators and the real powerful supporters of it, yes, they're either disabled in a sense they can no longer function there in that capacity, and others will be removed. Now, of course, there have been already a lot that has been removed so far, but that when that range is not there, it's going to be uncomfortable. Because if you want to go play with somebody that you want to fight with, you're not going to feel comfortable there, because nobody wants to play with you anymore, and nobody's going to go that low. So remember, a lot of those control structures feed off or actually are supported in these lower frequencies. And if you can't go in those lower frequencies, then their operating system goes insane. It cannot. It runs out of energy. So they may choose to leave. And a lot of them have already left, because we already, as humanity, because of a lot of other people that have already increased their frequency. And the push is still a lot to do with fear, but the fear now is looking more ridiculous and more insane, in a sense. Less and less people are getting caught up in that fear or being taken from that wave, but that will alter it even further when we're going into December 21st, 2021. So, sorry, 2020. So we're from this point. So we're here now. We're just about to enter here, and we're going to go through that. So we have, basically 7 weeks, before, this comes into play. And it kind of stages us for even further along the way. Now, depending on the areas that you are, while we're going through all of these intensities, these pulses, part of the purging may create instability also in the environmental component. And we have to realize and understand that all of the stuff that's happening on the planet right now, you're saying, well, Gaia's rebelling, or the fact that, some of that is not. some of it is being stimulated by certain technologies, and we're not even talking about HARP because that's a part of it, but there's other technologies that are using satellites and so forth that are playing out. And that's the only reason. The only reason it's playing out at this point in time is just to give you the kind of creating, because we still have the power, unconsciously of course, to be part of it. So at some point you may feel that, hey, you're getting the message that you need to relocate or take a little trip or something of that nature. You can, and you will, because you feel that, because whatever has to play out there, and it doesn't mean it has to be disastrous, because there might be the possibility for that, because I've already seen some glimpse of it, that there's a possibility. It's a possibility, high probability. However, to what degree, where exactly, and so forth, it will be determined along the way, because the clusters in those areas, the groups, the communities in those areas will have to be the one that chooses to do that. So you may be in one of those communities and you're saying, man, you know something, I don't feel like I want to be here. Let's go on vacation, or let's relocate. And people have been relocating from different parts of the world right now, or different states if you're in the US, and different provinces if you're in Canada, if you're different parts of within your country, and also people have been shuffling. So there's going to be some more shuffling, that will be because people will feel within themselves it's time to move. So the rigidity from the structures and so forth, they're going to lose capacities to it. Even the grip that the monetary system, the government system, the police system, and so forth will become much more rational along the way as we're going into that, to the point where it focuses a little bit more in the direction, that's after the 21st, but focuses more on what needs to really take place so that anarchy doesn't exist, it doesn't take off, but at the same time be a little bit more supportive rather than being driven to just follow a particular narrative or rules or something. And that's already been happening to a certain degree for a lot of people that are in certain roles. They're either choosing to leave whatever they're doing, or they're choosing to kind of not reinforce or enforce the various narratives that they were assigned. They're starting to look at, hey, wait a minute, we're all in it together. Why am I doing this? Because it affects not only myself, it affects my family and the future of the direction that we shape. So all of that stuff, changes along the way. So, okay. So that's what we're looking at. And going into January, February, March, it will seem intense. Again, the curbing is there so that you're not going to go as low, but there's going to be a lot. So what we're looking at when we're going into 2021, disclosure is one of the main themes. Now, there's different levels of disclosure. What does it mean? We've already had lots of it and continue, but there's a lot of denial. People are still in heavy, heavy denial because they've been programmed to believe that these authorities, these people, these clusters, these systems, and so forth are there for our best interest, which they are in a way, if you look at the big picture, because it creates a certain experience. But coming to the surface where you've given your power away, now you're looking at it and saying, hey, wait a minute here. Look, I've been giving power to here, but they're not really looking after us. So that gives us the opportunity to say, do I continue to support this or not? Am I going to pull out of it or not? And this is the thing. So the disclosure is going to show you the seams of the system, the monetary system, the governmental system, which has already been exposed in a big way. And look at all the stuff that they're doing right now where, it doesn't even make sense how they're doing it. But at the same time, the educational system, all of the different systems and control structures and rules and dictatorships and also, certain elites controlling certain parts are going to come to the surface. And we've already been seeing it. You're also seeing it, some of the stuff that's even happening, which people call corruption and so forth. Even within the political stuff, it's all leaking out. It didn't come out a year ago to the degree it's coming out now, but it's still suppressed and so forth. Some of that suppression, some of those role players will be, unplugged to a certain degree where they no longer will lock it up. Even the stuff with the social media and the controlling structures and so forth that's been occurring, a lot of that will change as we're going into. So really, when we're looking at 2021, it just becomes more apparent so that the denial starts to fade. The denial starts to break down so that you can actually see what's going on, rather going into an illusionary idea what is really going on, or what is going on, or what we think is going on. That's kind of really what's changing in that regard. So it's all about kind of disclosure, but it's also a year of more discovery, of self-discovery. So you're going to see the old ruling, the old establishment, the old setup. So you're going to look at the old, and then you're going to look at the new. But the big part is you're going to look at you. There's going to be further empowerment, further self-observation. There's going to be so much more that's going to change within ourselves that we can see ourselves. So we're going to look at the old world that we've supported and played with very long, and going to see it much more clearly. Then we're going to look at the new design of the new. Are we in the new world? Yes, we are, but we are shaping the new world. We are involved directly in how it looks and how it plays out, and even how to bring it online. But the thing is, it's you. You're going to be much more involved in the design, and the fact that you get to see that you're a very powerful being. So it's all about self-empowerment, but also taking the role of using that self-empowerment and start shaping your life even further. So going into when we're talking about April 2021, a lot of the things that we have been feeling in our heart, been kind of observing as that world will start to be reinforced, where the polarity is not as required as before, to reinforce so that we can express it even more clearly. And it's going to start, rippling effect all throughout the whole planet. And more people will start to shift in a very powerful way and start to realize further. Now, of course, the ones that don't want to play chooses to leave. Other people can, other souls and human entities can drop in, even in the extras, or even the ones that are active that don't want to participate throughout. So all of that will exchange. So my point is, it's going to look very bumpy. And the level of bumpiness can really stimulate very powerfully any polarities that you may have, giving you the opportunity to exercise more neutrality and clear out some of these polarities. How it's going to look on the planet and so forth, and what we look at chaotic is to know inside that this is part and parcel of what is required. Now, I know the question comes up, is that why does it have to be bumpy? Why does it have to be painful? Why does it have to be that we have to have these extreme polarities? Well, we got disempowered through polarity. And we're now using polarity to become empowered. Because the thing is, through what we were experiencing, we shed like what we call free will, but at least it's not really the free will. You kind of took the free will to accept whatever's there and use that to navigate our sovereignty, and also feeling that we were nothing except another human that has to work so hard to get some credentials to be popular or to be known or to somehow be successful and all of that stuff. And we've done that through the game. So now the intensification of the game is actually now assisting us with the streaming of higher consciousness and higher vibration and alterations within ourselves and new encodements. We're actually using that mechanism that actually brought us into the depth of 3D, inverted 3D and 2D, to bring us out of it. Now, it gives the opportunity for us to wrap up whatever we needed to wrap up. One of the best tools that we have where we can learn from and also create a shift is that if we have certain levels of polarity that play out, we get to see the stories, the programs, the belief systems, and patterns that were established through that mentality, through that programming of some sort, or that is still active in that polarity dance. So that's actually allowing us to see it. So we're getting pushed. So there's a lot of button pushing along here. That's even before we include the playmates that we're going to end up playing with. So there's a lot of button pushing just for us to see it so we can purge it. That's the only reason, the intensities. The other thing is people get very compliant or complacent, and then unless they're pushed, they don't take action. They don't take a shift. And this is why we've been feeling very powerfully certain emotions coming up and certain things that are playing out and interactions being very colorful, all of that stuff within ourselves, because it's actually keeping us in action. So the next few months is to keep the pace even further. So we make huger leaps. The movement is increased. And this is why we don't even have a big space in between each pulse that comes in, each opportunity, each encodement. And even in our own experience, it's just back to back, back to back, back to back, just to keep the momentum going, but to expedite the movement and to be able to do a lot more, because we have chosen to take huge leaps in this transformation without, elongate it or have it over a long period of time, because we felt that at this time it's about time. It's about time, because the slower way, because you look at it, if we're living life a certain way, we can get very complacent and say, oh, okay, I'm just going to play the life whatever it is. I may not be comfortable, but, at the same time, or that, I'm having all this stuff going on, but, it's not motivating enough to do that. Now, that doesn't require you to have that as a motivator. That's optional. But sometimes that option is the most viable option there is. And for the majority of people, that is the most viable option, because we've gotten so complacent, so locked up, and at the same time actually become, not immune, but what's the word, when it doesn't have the same impact. So then we have to increase it even further. So a lot of people put in now the choice to say, if the right person comes in, we're gonna be better. No, they're playing a particular role. And you have to understand some of these individuals that are taking, say, even in the political part, different roles, from a deep end, they're still being, directed to play a particular role that actually is to support us one way or another. One's a little bit more colorful than the other, and one of them is going to, has a little bit more support because there's a lot of back end stuff that's going on that is supporting them. But at the same time, it's all part and parcel of keeping us moving forward in a powerful way. So with this, also the other preparation that we'll have after this here, some of the disclosure stuff that we're going to see is we're not going to be as emotionally charged. We're going to see it. Oh, that's what's happening. Okay, now I got the picture. Okay, let's terminate that part. The abuse of children, the abuse of women, the abuse of race, abuse of whatever, all of these abuses, and the fact that how, things were set up a certain way, but it is not conducive to actually the true operating system or how we, actually function. So all of that is preparing us to be able to see it much more clearly without the reaction, without getting lost. Because, more heavily programmed we are, more reactive that we are, guess what? When we have certain things stimulated, then we react. And what happens through reaction, we lose clarity. And we're going to talk about that in episode 49, which will start in about an hour's time. But was there any other questions or clarity? I'm hoping that I'm sharing everything that I needed to share today, because there was a bunch of stuff, but my soul seems to not want to be streaming all of that, so I guess
it's okay. It's not time then. The question that came up was a lot of people commented that at this time they're not sleeping very well, or, you know, they're going through some physical changes.
Yes, that's all
not
part
eating properly or not having appetite, or
yes,
so the not sleeping was a big one.
yes. And I'll be talking a little bit more about it in the next episode. But at the same time, because of a lot of the purging that's happening with us from our old operating system, because of all these energies coming in, there's a lot of stimulation going on. Now, the stimulation is stimulating the body, so at some points there's heavily adrenaline being run through your system, which will make the sleeping not as comfortable. But we're also at the same time, where a lot of the stuff that's going on right now is also, bringing in the dream state on a heavy way, which can play out a lot of stuff that would not be able to be experienced in the awakened state. There's also an adjustment with the body. So the thing is, I'm going to talk about it a little more in the next episode, but to pay attention to some of your patterns, okay? Pay attention to what you're consuming, what you're exposing yourself to, because that creates also a stimulation. Now, is it necessary? It's not. It's optional, but a lot of times we have, because of the defaults, we go into that option. Yes, and many of us, including myself, the sleep state is not the best. The digestive system is also reacting too. So because of part of the change that are occurring within ourselves, that what we normally used to be able to consume is not something that we can consume now, because food has certain vibrations. Now, natural, live food at this point in time, and I'm talking about fruits and vegetables, not the animal kingdom or anything of that nature, carries the most updated codes, because they're exposed to the sunlight, and as the frequency of the sun increases, it increases. It's also exposed to the vibration of Gaia and what it has to offer. It's also within the air itself, because all of these waves coming in is also changing the structure of the air, and also it's changing the structure of the water. Remember, water is like a powerful media that takes on various frequencies very easily. So the sun will shine through the water and will actually change the structure of it, and because it's exposed to the environment around it. So all of these things are a factor. Now, for the moment we go into factory stuff and whatever else, or processed stuff, then it's not current anymore, because now, depending on how things are applied, it changes the structure. So the body is making you know that, okay, it's time to change, time to eat lighter, because the thing is, certain foods that require digestion, because our body in its natural state is not designed to digest food, okay? Not in the way that we've conditioned it to do so, and actually had to adapt to it. But that conditioning is deconditioning itself. So you're going to find that not only are you going to need less, you're also going to notice that certain foods, and if you pay attention to it, make you feel a certain way. And that's the body's indication to you that that food is no longer acceptable at this point in time, or needs to be curbed, or reduced tremendously in the exposure of it, because the body is not matching with that frequency, because it's choosing to adapt or connect to the higher frequency that is supporting through the transformation that's going on. If you feel tired during the day, take a nap, if anything possible, because it allows you to give the body and also your mind and all parts of you to be able to integrate a lot of the stuff that you are receiving energetically, code-wise, and so forth. And then in the evening, set up a pattern of a particular time. The earlier the better now. That way you're not catching some of the more erratic waves that come in later on. So those are some of the adjustments you can do, but it's all part and parcel of all the changes that are taking place. Go ahead.
Nicolette has also suggested that to protect yourself at night from EMF. Like, you can get the blankets that you can put on you, or the tents, like, so that you're not being bombarded constantly.
Correct.
And maybe, whatever you can do around your home to put in stuff for that as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of EMFs, and they do create a certain form of disruption in the changes that are occurring. So if you can reduce the amount of exposure And like you were saying, Kimberly, that there are fabric you can buy that you can make a kind of a blanket, and I guess they actually make some blankets that actually
Tents. You put right over you.
or tents over you.
Like a bed, like a.
Oh, they make those things?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, because Nicolette is talking about it on the chat there. Yeah, they make things that hang over your bed.
Canopies
It's
or
like a
something?
net that would hang, like a canopy that would hang over
Okay.
your bed that would protect you from the
Yeah,
bombardment of those.
and it's not so much the protection part, but it actually reduces the exposure so that those frequencies that have a tendency to kind of create a disruption or lower your frequency or keep, cap your range of what you can. So it actually reduces that, and it gives you time for the body to integrate with the higher frequencies that are coming in. So if you feel guided to do that, then and you can make it happen, then it would be a bonus at this point in time to take some of those measures, especially with some of these more potent frequencies that they're launching here and there. That if you can reduce the exposure, that especially in the sleep state, because it does disrupt the sleep state more, and that. You have to understand that there's also satellites that are transmitting certain frequencies, not only just the towers that at times get ramped up at night to create a little bit more disruption. Again, I'm not saying that okay, we got to be afraid of that, but at the same time to also realize that that can affect also your sleep state. There is some provisions that are being arranged to neutralize some of that, but at the same time. Even going into, when we're looking into that, a lot of that will be altered in a more powerful way, but it's allowing some of that in the next 4 to 5 months to still play a particular role, even though it's going to shift. But at some points, the thing is, we're becoming more sensitive. We're more sensitive to the frequencies, or more sensitive to our body's response to things of that nature. You were going to say something?
I was just going to say that Nicolette has suggested that people just Google Swiss Guard to get more information about the nets or the fabric that protects you, just so the people on
Swiss Guard?
Facebook hear that as well.
Okay.
Sorry, it wasn't Swiss Guard, it's Swiss Shield. So
Swiss Shield?
Shield. Yeah, sorry. And she also says if you sleep on the first floor in the apartment, you need to put something under your bed as well. If you're on the ground floor, you don't need anything under your bed.
Okay. Yes, I've heard something of that nature too, because you can have that coming through the bottom. So I had a thought I was going to say something, and I forgot now what it was. Yeah, whatever you're going to apply with, I remember now. Whatever you're going to apply, even if you're going to choose to feel guided to do any of this stuff, and this has kind of been recommended by others that have been kind of receiving similar information, if possible, if you can do that. If you can reduce some of the exposure that you have, not to use it as a I need to be afraid and I got to do something. You will know, okay, I'd like to kind of create an environment where I can keep my my physicality more aligned with the changes that are occurring without any unnecessary, at this point in time, extra exposure to certain frequencies that can dwarf or shift part of the experience. So it takes longer, and you need stronger bursts that we're getting along the way. Now, that doesn't mean everybody in the world has to go do that. I'm just saying, a lot of us will not be as sensitive to it along the way. So anyways, that's what we're looking at. We have 4 to 5 months where things may look a little more chaotic. We do have a little bit of assistance on the 21st that will actually eliminate some of the really deep lower vibrational states. And then we have some upgrades that will occur in April 2021. Some, in some cases, it may come a little bit start a little earlier into March, but right now this is more of where it's leaning. Um, it's going to be colorful. It's going to be interesting. We're doing it together. And this is one of the reasons that I've been pushing a little further with a lot of the stuff that I'm doing now. We'll be doing this twice a week. And then we do have Advancing Consciousness podcast, which started on Wednesday. Episode 4 went out today. There's an episode every single day that will go out. They're a little shorter, of course, and I'm not using the board. I'm usually sitting down talking about various topics and so forth. So if you want to access that, yes, it's on my Facebook on the regular 2 pages, the public page and the personal page. However, we have a group called Advancing Consciousness Podcast Group on Facebook where you can, join the group, and I will be posting that every day, a different video. I also have a new YouTube channel also called Advancing Consciousness Podcast, and that will have all the episodes. A new one every day will be introduced there. I kept it separate, so we have 2 channels. We have Advancing Consciousness Series, which is these episodes, which are more educational, or much more, when I say educational, it provides more tools and goes a little bit more in depth in certain areas. And then we have the other one that is the Advancing Consciousness podcast, which will be more frequent but shorter, and we'll take various topics and expand it. We'll take people's questions and expand it. We will also be doing some interviews and conversations with other people that are going through different things in their lives that have something to offer to share. So there's going to be various things. So check us out on YouTube for Advancing Consciousness Podcast. And if you're not on YouTube with the series, you can sign. So basically subscribe, notification bell, put comments and so forth. So that way it's comments or likes and whatever else, so that it actually reaches more people. If you're doing it on Facebook, join the Facebook group. So we have 2 Facebook groups. We have Advancing Consciousness Series Facebook group, and we have Advancing Consciousness Podcast, which is new. That is also there. So right now there's four videos. We also will have the podcast available audio only, and that will be available. Right now it's available on Podbean. We're just working the details out, or we're following the steps that are required to get it on Apple Sound, on Google, on Spotify, and I think there's maybe 5 or 6 different platforms that will be available for you to access, and that will be just the audio version of it. And so it's a good version to take. You're not going to miss much because I don't really show anything except for facial expressions when I'm communicating on the podcast, because I'm not using the board. At some point I may introduce the whiteboard that's built into the software itself that we host from, that we may do something with that, but right now that's not going to happen anytime in the very near future. But so that's great. Thank you again for coming along. Join us in about 45 or so minutes, 45 or less minutes from now, where we will go into episode 49, and we're going to look at some things that actually just carry on what we talked about further. Am I missing anything else that I needed to cover? Somehow I feel that there was something else I wanted to say, or my soul was saying, but it didn't say it, so I guess it's not. If any other updates are required at any point in time, we'll let you know. So enjoy the ride, and we'll see you in a little while.